All right, so yeah, let's get into it. So as I mentioned last week, I traveled to Utah to play the Timber Moose Chess18 event. And it was basically a Chess 960 event, except they call it Chess18 because the point of this event was to play positions where the pieces are jumbled up on the first row like you get in Chess 960, but the kings and the rooks, they start on the original squares. So both sides, they always have their kings on E1 and E8, and then rooks in the corner, and then the rest of the pieces, the queens, knights, and bishops are all jumbled up randomly, and then you get one of those starting positions. So yeah, I thought it was actually a very, very cool format. And like the point of this is to kind of make it a somewhat easier transition, because one of the main drawbacks of Chess 960 is that a lot of the starting positions are just immediately very strange and very difficult to play. You have like a knight on A1, you get like this, queen, you get the king messed up. So by starting with like the king and the rooks, kind of the normal position, castling is always going to be the same and not super funky. It just gives you a more kind of like realistic position from the get-go. And I did really enjoy that because I do like Chess 960. But when you get a Chess 960 position that's just like so like wild and you just can't possibly like get a normal position out of the opening, it just makes you feel like you're playing like a total chess variant, right? Like you're not even playing like normal chess anymore. Whereas with Chess 18, as you guys will see, I played a bunch of games, and pretty much all the games, were like very interesting, got like interesting positions, but not like totally like irrational messes. And some players, they enjoy like the irrational messes that you get from Chess 960. Personally, I feel like I like the in-between. I want to be able to like kind of get a structure that's like somewhat familiar, but with, weirdly arranged pieces. And you actually did get a lot of that in the event, where we get like a French, structure, but with everyone's pieces kind of on weird squares, like a Caro-Kann, Queen's Gambit decline structure, but like all the pieces are kind of in unusual spots. And then, part of the difficulty was like having to figure out exactly like, okay, how does this compare to like a classic position? Where am I trying to put my pieces and so on. So that's Chess 18. It was hosted by the Timber Moose Lodge, which is run by this guy, Matt Evans, who's a big chess fan. And the lodge itself actually was very cool. It was a very cool site. It's in Utah, in Heber City, up in Timber Lakes. So we had to go up a little bit in elevation to get there. We were up in the mountains. Folks, there was so much snow. I've never seen this much snow in my life. And I've been to like snowy places. I've been to like Montana. I've been to Canada. I've been to like Big Bear, California. I've lived in St. Louis for a bit. We've got some snow here, but it was nothing. Yeah, those are nothing like Utah mountain snow. I mean, it's just like packed, just like feet and feet of snow. A polar bear could have hidden in our backyard and like no one would have noticed. Just like that much snow. And there's also like a bunch of snowstorms throughout the trip. Which was kind of cool because we got to be inside in this huge and very comfortable lodge. So it was a really, really cool lineup. They basically invited a bunch of streamers, personalities to play the event. So we had Anna Cramling, Daniel Naroditsky, Eric Rosen, Gauri Shankar, GMCanty, myself, of course. Then you had Nemo Zhu, AkaNemsko, and Larry Kaufman. Unfortunately, he was supposed to be there in person, but then it turned out he got like COVID like right before the trip, so he was sick and not feeling well, so he decided to stay home, which is very unfortunate because actually he was very, very instrumental to this whole event. People probably know he is a big contributor to Komodo, the chess engine. And he was analyzing a lot of like the Chess 18 positions with Komodo, and he was helping out like set all of like the format and some of the handicaps that we played with. But unfortunately he wasn't able to make it, but he was part of the event as well. And then we had Kayden Troff also, who was not supposed to play the tournament. Kayden was actually there to commentate because they were streaming the games, and they had Kayden, who's a GM, doing the official commentary, which was pretty cool. Kayden's a super strong player. Some people might not know him because he kind of stopped playing a couple of years ago, or hasn't played as much in like tournaments and stuff. But he used to be a very, very promising junior. He was a grandmaster at 16. And of course, he's still a very, very strong player. I actually ended up playing some games with him, and yeah, he has definitely kept his strength. So yeah, let's keep strolling here. So okay, there we have introducing Chess18, a little bit of kind of the backstory here, and this is kind of the organizer's point of view. You know, he, as many doesn't love the current state of modern chess with all this like theory, you know, like Berlin draws, and just like, you know, the game feels very, very played out. And so, you know, for most people, including Fischer, like the inventor of Chess960, Fischer Random, you know, a lot of players are interested in kind of introducing some variants to chess. Personally, I do feel like chess 1, the original position, is going to stick around for a long time. There's just so many years of tradition. Like, I can't imagine we're going to move away from chess 1, but I feel like the way things are going, you know, over time, we're slowly going to see like more and more Chess960 events, maybe kind of hybrid events like this Chess18, where there's a fewer number of positions to choose from. But yeah, I kind of feel like over time, we're just going to get more and more 960 events. Yeah. One of the cool things about this event was like, you know, we got to play these positions that are pretty close to like the starting position. So for example, Capablanca apparently suggested to just change the bishop and knight starting positions. So just like king and queen, rooks, you know, as normal, and just flip the bishop and the knight. So you put the bishop on b1, knight on c1, and then knight on f1, and then bishop on g1. And there would just be, you know, new variant, you know, just play this position. And that's kind of what I like about this. Like, you can really start to like develop opening theory and try to figure out like, okay, how do you fight for an advantage from this position? So yeah, okay, down here we have the standings. I think that's going to be some spoilers. So let me let me scroll back up here. Actually, maybe I can find some pictures from the lodge. The lodge was absolutely gorgeous. Here you guys can see the aerial view. It didn't really look like this. Actually, all this like green stuff was not here. This was all covered in snow. And there was definitely no bouncy castle. I don't remember a bouncy castle. That would have been awesome. But no bouncy castle. But everything else I think is still true to picture. Yeah, there's a bunch of huge bedrooms here. We each got our own room, a bunch of fireplaces. There was like a pool, which unfortunately was out of service. There was a hot tub, which was great. And then we had this like huge kitchen with like multiple islands and very, very nice refrigerator. It's very small for you guys, but these wooden doors here, this was like the fridge and the freezer. And yeah, the food was great. There was a gentleman there while we were there named DeWitt, who was helping out, and I believe by profession he's actually a caterer. But he was the big hero of the trip, because he would make us breakfast every morning. He had this like huge spread of like bagels and muffins and fruit and yogurt and, you know, juice, and milk and toast and all this stuff. And then he would cook omelets to order. You know, we had our own omelet station. And I mean, it's just like the little things, guys, that really like it's just really make your trip. So that was amazing. And then he would go out and get us food for like lunch and dinner. For lunch, we usually had like sandwiches and like soup and salad and stuff. And then for dinner, we'd have like a different kind of takeout thing every night. The first night we did lasagna, which was delicious. Second night we did enchiladas, and we had like some Mexican food as well. Then the third night we had this like big gathering with the organizer's family and everything, which was super nice. And we had barbecue, which was absolutely delicious, absolutely fantastic. I'm a big fan of barbecue. Easiest way to my heart, for sure. So yeah, we were taken care of, and it was a very, very fun time. It was basically just like, big Airbnb trip with a bunch of, chess players and streamers, just having fun. Yeah, like we would, hang out all day. We went out one of the days to go snowmobiling. I'll tell you guys about it in a sec. That was super fun. I'll show you guys some photos from that. Yeah, I mean, it was just an absolute blast. Like we were only there for like 3-4 days, but it really felt like so much longer. So the format of the event was a double round robin. So everyone played 2 games against everyone else, and we had a rapid time control. But we did it a little differently, where because we had a bunch of players of like different levels, we actually gave each other, or we were supposed to give each other odds, like time odds. So basically the way it worked is we had multiple tiers of players. And if 2 players were in the same tier, like they were around the equal level, then they would play 12 plus 5. So they would play 2 games of 12 plus 5, from the same, randomly drawn Chess18 position, and then they would flip colors and play the second game. But there was basically 3 tiers. So we had Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky. He was just in tier 1, his own tier, because he was just by far the strongest player there. Then in tier 2, you had the IMs, basically. You had Eric Rosen, myself, and you had Gauri Shankar. Gauri's technically an FM, but he has, no joke, 8 IM norms. He has literally 8. He just made his 8th IM norm recently. He just hasn't been able to get like the FIDE rating to 2400. I'm sure he can do it. He's like a very, very strong player. It's just hard. You got to be consistent, and you have a bad tournament, your rating goes down. So he just needs to get the 2400 FIDE, and then he'll be an IM. And you have GMCanty. He's FM as well, but his FIDE is pretty high, and also this is a Blitz and Rapid event, and James's Blitz and Rapid is very, very strong. Definitely not worse than any of ours. So he was kind of considered tier 2 as well. And then in tier 3, you had Anna Cramling, Nemo as well, and Larry. So they are in the 3rd tier. So the way it worked is like if you're a tier 2 player playing tier 3 player, then you give them odds. And if you're tier 2 playing tier 1, then you get odds from tier 1. And then, when Danya is playing one of the tier 3 players, then he's giving mega odds. Now, it ended up getting it was a very flexible event, guys. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. But, we showed up, and there was a lot of, like, just negotiation throughout the event. The organizer, he's, like, very chill. He had his vision of like what he wanted the format to be, but then he was also very open to just getting our input, and if we didn't like something or we wanted to like change something up, he was very, very amenable to that. And by the end of it, there was this big inside joke going around that we were basically self-governing as a chess tournament, a little bit actually with what's going on with the women's FIDE Grand Prix in Delhi right now, where players are just doing all kinds of stuff. But except it was a lot less dramatic for us, and a lot more chill, and a lot less at stake. So the time odds for the event were as follows. If there was like a 1-tier difference, it would be just time odds. So it would be 18 minutes versus 6 minutes, meaning, again, if 2 players play that were like in the same tier, they would each get 12 minutes and 5-second increment. If it was a player in different tiers, then the low-rated player would get 18 minutes to start with a 5-second increment, and then the high-rated player would get 6 minutes with the 5-second increment. And then the odds were also adjusting because we would play 2 games against each other. So if in the first game, let's say the high-rated player wins with the 6 minutes versus 18 minutes, then for the second game, they would get 4 minutes versus 20. So the odds kind of increase. Whereas if the low-rated player wins that first game, then for the second game, they would just play equal odds, which I thought was kind of fair. And if it's a draw, then I think you just keep the same odds and you flip the colors. So if there was a 1-tier difference, then it's 18 versus 6. But when Danya had to play against tier 3, he actually had to give them a full piece. So you have to give full piece odds plus time odds. So he was giving very, very heavy odds to the lower rated players. But he ended up doing very well. So I think the odds were, like the odds, they always sound like, oh man, piece odds, 18 versus 6. But then he won, almost all his games. So it turned out to be, maybe the odds could have been even higher. Yeah. And then things ended up getting a little bit scuffed later on because I don't know who started this. I think it was either Gauri or Eric. I forget which one of them did it first, but yeah, they didn't give odds or they didn't accept odds from Danya. So they were supposed to play like 18 versus 6. But I think Gauri, he just wanted to play straight up, let's just play 12 versus 12. And like I said, we were self-governing. So we were supposed to give odds or get odds, but that didn't happen. And then Eric also, he played on even terms with Danya. And then when it was like my turn to play, I'm like, well, all right, I don't want to be the only one like taking odds. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll also play on even terms with Danya, which ended up being, very, very fun, but of course also very, very difficult. This is my Instagram. This was out in Utah. We went out snowmobiling. We went to this place called Daniel Summit, and we had to drive a little bit to get there. But yeah, it was very, very pretty, and it was a lot of prep work. If you're gonna go snowmobiling, you really need to be like very warm, and you got to make sure like absolutely no snow is getting inside of your clothing, because that would be very, very cold and bad. So yeah, it was a lot of work to like get dressed, get like the neck warmers, like hand warmers, like all this stuff, helmet, goggles. But once we got out there, it was super, super fun. Yeah, this was up in the mountains. So we'd like go snowmobiling, then we'd like pull over at some point. It was all, I think pretty much almost everyone went. Some people got like single, some people got doubles. Me and Gauri, we shared a snowmobile, which was super fun because it was our first time. We were both a little nervous, and we thought it'd just be more fun to kind of like take turns. It was basically like riding a motorcycle, but in the snow. Maybe not quite as fast, but yeah, it was an absolute blast. So let's get to the chess. So this is the Chess18 event. Like I mentioned, it's Chess 960 essentially, but the kings and the rooks, they always start in the default position, and then the rest of the pieces, they actually get shuffled randomly. So the queens, knights, and bishops. So in the first round, I was paired against Anna Cramling. This is a round robin, so we would eventually play everyone in the tournament. And we ended up getting this position. I forget which one this is called. All the different positions, they have names. Like Chess 1 is the original position with the queen on d8, knight on b8. Chess 2 is queen on d8, and then the bishops and knights just swapped. And then, of course, you can have like 2 bishops on the queen side, 2 bishops on the king side. So there are all kinds of different, configurations you can have. 18 to be exact, hence Chess 18. This is the official tournament hoodie, by the way. I didn't show. This is from the Timber Moose Lodge, Chess 18. Actually, their logo is very cool because this was Timber Moose Lodge in Timber Lakes. There were supposedly moose in the area, big moose destination. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see one. I would have loved to see a moose, but didn't manage to catch one. But the logo is very cool because it's kind of like a knight, like a chess knight, but it's with the moose antlers. It's kind of a little. It was fun. It was fun. And then the winner was actually supposed to get this like very, not big, but very nice like little wooden trophy of the logo. Yeah, so this was round 1. We're playing this position. I don't know what it's called, like Chess 4 or Chess 6 or something. But as you can see, it's actually not the craziest position. This side of the board is normal, and then of course these pieces are arranged a little bit differently. Before the game, we were kind of joking that, you know, we could essentially transpose to a Nimzo Indian if we both felt inclined in playing this position. But of course it would have been. But the funny thing is, like, white can play queen c2. It's like, so this would all be like very, very normal. But of course this would be a little bit tricky. Even if the knight comes out to c6, then black still has to figure out what to do with the queen. Shout out to Anna, by the way. Very, very nice person. It was fun to hang out with her. She's, yeah, exactly like she is on stream and off stream, basically. Just, yeah, very friendly. And well, she was a great sport because she was by far the lowest rated player in the field. Like, she and Nemo were in the tier 3, but Nemo was actually, you know, a little bit higher and definitely higher rated in like speed and blitz and rapid chess. But yeah, Anna basically had to play up like every single game. And she did get odds. Like for this game, she started with 18 minutes and I had 6. And yeah, so she goes c4, which I thought was logical, opening up the queen. And at this point, I was sticking to my strategy of trying to play a King's Indian in every game. So g6, bishop g7, this felt like a good start. And I believe Anna is like a d4, c4 player in normal chess. So it wasn't too crazy that she kind of goes for this setup right off the bat. And yeah, I won't like dwell on these games too much. Here I decided to play f5, basically just trying to get like an improved King's Indian. Because as you guys can see, the knight is on d8. So of course I could play like knight f6 here, castle, and then like d6, play like typical Benoni. But then knight on d8 would just be like horrible piece, right? Queen on d8. So I was trying to kind of like fix this ahead of time by playing f5 and then giving the knight a score on f7. Because I thought, okay, if I can get the knights out and castle, get d6, then I actually have a very decent King's Indian, Leningrad Dutch, whatever you want to call it. The bishop's on g7 and life is good. So knight c3, knight f6. I thought she actually played really well in the opening. She breaks with e4 here, which I felt was correct. I went d6, bishop d3. Now I got to take. I went knight f7. Here she goes, knight g5. Probably she could have played this, you know, a number of different ways. I haven't really checked any of these games with the engine. So I don't really know where exactly, you know, both sides could have improved. But during the game, I felt like she had a very good position. I didn't have too much time to dwell on it because I, you know, had to play quickly. But yeah, I think white ended up being definitely better here because I have some weaknesses. e6 is weak, g6 is weak. You know, here after knight takes g5, of course, she's threatening to sack. So I castled here. I didn't think the sack in this position was going to be very dangerous because my knight's already covering h7. But you never know, like black's pieces are kind of far away, right? So you have to be, you know, sometimes it might just end up still like a super strong attack, knight e6, bishop h6, all this stuff. But anyway, she goes h4. And here I played e5. Basically, I felt like I have to do something to change the, you know, the character of the position because she's just ready to play h5 and just give mate. So e5 I felt like was an interesting move. If takes, the idea was either to go rook e8 first or maybe just take and then go rook e8. And I felt like if I could get this position, like it looks like kind of a Benoni. I've traded off some pieces. My bishop on g7 is very good. And since we've traded off some pieces, I felt like white's attack shouldn't be as strong. So e5, she ignores it. She pushes h5. And then I push e4. Basically just trying to give the pawn in order to get some counterplay on the e-file. I think it was a good decision. Like if knight takes e4, I was probably going to take and go bishop f5, I think. And my idea was like, all right, I'm sacrificing a pawn here. I've given up a pawn, but I just want to get my pieces out very quickly. And then if I can do that, I can probably get some decent counterplay, right? So e4, she ends up going back bishop e2. I honestly wasn't sure what white should do, to be perfectly honest. But at this point, I definitely felt like my position is improving. So bishop e3, h6, and now she goes g4. Actually, very, very strong move, I think, because at this point, I felt really good about my position. I'm like, all right, I'm kicking the knight, if knight e6, I can probably take and like go g5, and then everything is under control. I'm going to pick up this pawn, and my pieces are quite good. And then if knight goes back to h3, you know, I got g5, and position looks fantastic. So g4 really messes everything up here for white, for black, because now my king is getting opened up. She's challenging the light squared bishop, and it was really hard to figure out exactly what to do here. I ended up taking here. She takes, and then I took on g5. I could take on g4 as well, but then I didn't love this position after knight e6, takes, because now the e-pawn is hanging, g6 is hanging, and so if g5, queen takes e4, this, yeah, did not look very good for me at all. So I take the knight, she takes here, I take the pawn, she takes on g5. So I recognize I have to sacrifice or give back a pawn, because I think I was right, because she gives up a pawn, and then I kind of give it back here, because takes, and then she takes on g5. So we end up with even material. But actually, I don't know, I kind of like this position. I thought my king would be safe on h8, and then I can go like f4 and e3. But I end up going wrong very, very quickly. To be fair, I didn't have a lot of time, right? At this point, like I'm already, you know, in time trouble. I'm trying to play quickly. She goes queen c1, playing for like bishop h6. And then here I'm pretty sure I blundered with this move, bishop d4. Because now she plays bishop e7, and this is all of a sudden just a mate threat, like queen h6, rook g1, just game over. So I didn't overlook this, but the move that I had in mind here, e3, I think is just like super, super risky. And during the game, I did not think that objectively this was great. But at least it was tricky, and it ends up kind of working out. So my point here was to sacrifice the exchange. Like I'm blocking the queen. If takes, then I could either recapture or maybe throw this one in first and then take. And then I don't know, this position seemed at least messy. I had no idea what the evaluation is, but I didn't see any immediate win for white. And so if there's no immediate win, then okay, maybe black has some play. And then after f takes e3, my idea was to go rook e8. Now that the queen is blocked. And in the game we get takes, and then this position was pretty messy as well. I think maybe bishop g5 here is probably stronger, just kind of holding on to this one. But okay, she was also actually getting pretty low on time at this point, so not easy to play under such time pressure. So white took, I took here. Now I play queen f8. Yeah, I kind of like my play here. I like mobilized my heavy pieces very quickly, like dc5. I just ignore rook e8. You know, it's just way more important to get the counterattack going and start playing for some mates here. And now I definitely felt like I had the upper hand, but she started defending. So rook h3. I played here, queen f3, and this one's hanging. So rook e5, rook g3. Now I didn't know what to do, so I went king h8, just kind of like a waiting move, getting the king off of this check. And she almost flags here, but she goes rook to g6. And I go queen d2. This was kind of my idea to threaten rook e1, followed by mate. But she finds all the moves here to defend. Queen f2. I played rook e2. And I thought this was like very close to winning, but after queen g3, it turns out there wasn't anything clear here for black, at least not that I could see. Maybe I'll confirm with the engine here. Yeah, engine right says white is better in this position, which is kind of surprising. It's like very active for black, but no threats, and you know I have to be very careful not to blunder f4, rook h6 mate. You know, this is very, very important. So I go rook h2, which I thought was the best try, threatening rook h1 check, but white is able to force the queens off. And unfortunately, rook h1 is met with rook g1, so I don't have anything clear here. So we get this rook endgame. I wasn't sure if like I'm better. We didn't have enough time for me to sit and evaluate the position, so I tried to just activate my pieces, but ended up going wrong here. Rook e1, I played here, and white comes in and gives checks. And it was only here I realized that actually my king is not escaping, because after rook e6, if I come this way, white has rook g6 check and wins the rook. So at this point, I'm forced to repeat, and we ended up making a draw like this. I forget how many times we repeated, but we repeated 3 times and draw was agreed, essentially. Possibly she could have played on. I'm not sure. I mean, something like d6 or something like that. But of course, it's very risky for white because, I'm ready to go rook c2, rook takes a2, start threatening some checkmates. And yeah, presumably someone's going to give perpetual here. So felt like a draw was probably a fair result. And yeah, in the next game, we kept the same odds, but this time I got white from the same position. So it was 6 versus 18. And yeah, I chose d4, d5. I went c4, Queen's Gambit. She played c6, Slav defense. During the game, I was actually thinking it's probably totally fine for black to go dc4 because black is kind of set up with b5. The queen is supporting this pawn. Bishop can come out to b7. So probably this was very playable, but I would have been fine with this. I'll go g3 or something, bishop g2, and look for compensation. But yeah, instead, Anna played c6, which I think is sensible. I went g3. Very tricky move, by the way, threatening bishop f4. At first glance, looks like, oh, okay, white just wants to go bishop g2. No, if you're not paying attention in chess 960, you allow bishop f4. Yeah, game over. 1-0. So she goes e5. Very interesting choice. Takes. It feels like it's a little bit early to bring the queen out. I play knight f3. But actually, she could have played bishop b4 check. And then this would have been very awkward. Knight c3, okay, black takes. If bishop d2, black also takes. And either I take with the king here or I got to take with the knight. And then if I take with the knight, well, then the queen is safe on e5 and black has no issues here, can just develop. So that was actually, I think, a missed opportunity because black goes queen h5. I develop. Now bishop b4 gets played. And I end up getting a very nice position out of the opening here because black kind of blunders with d4. I think she overlooked queen e4 check. And or maybe the next move, because after knight e6, it looks like everything is defended. But then white gets knight f5. And here I was starting to feel really good about the position because I'm threatening knight takes g7, knight takes d4, knight d6 check. And black can't really defend everything. So I think white is winning a pawn and has a very decent position. So king f8 was played. I took... This wasn't the easiest extra pawn to convert because... although my position felt very safe, black does end up getting a little bit of counterplay, but I think for the most part, I did a decent job here. G6, I castled, king G7, now queen C3, setting up ideas of knight E4 and stuff. So bishop H3, played here, queen E5. We went for the endgame, and I kept the extra pawn, and yeah, I felt like I converted it pretty well. Knight E3, takes. She goes g5, looking for counterplay. I played g4, kind of shutting off the bishop, also looking to establish the knight on f5 and just come in with the rooks. And yeah, here black decided to sack the exchange, which I definitely thought was a possibility, especially like we didn't have a lot of time. We have 5-second increments. And black definitely gets some compensation here, but during the game, I felt like I should have really good winning chances here as white. I didn't quite see enough counterplay for black. I thought my king is actually reasonably safe and my rooks have a lot of targets. So I just took rook d5 and yeah, I thought it was pretty smooth. f5, e4, just kind of breaking everything up. Takes, and yeah, as long as white doesn't blunder some kind of skewer or some trick, pretty much should be winning. And I didn't have too much trouble here. Rook f2. I did like my next move here, e5, just showing that black actually has no good checks. The king and rook are perfectly safe. And here I'm just pushing the pawn and wanting to promote. So I think it's very little black can do at this point. It's basically just lost with best play. So takes, b3, and yeah, I just grabbed the pawn, came back, and these positions when you're in exchange up, I mean, as long as you don't hang anything, they're pretty straightforward. E6 check, a little bit of a touch here after bishop takes, rook d1, the bishop would be lost. So king is forced back, rook h8, and that was in the game. So I ended up winning 1.5, and we were doing soccer scoring, so every win is worth 3 points. So all the wins were very, very important to pick up. But yeah, this wasn't easy, especially that first game. You know, was very, very close. Yeah, so let's go to the next round. So then I was supposed to play. Then I got a bye actually because there was like an odd number of players. Then I was supposed to play Komodo. That fell through. We couldn't get Komodo to work and be a willing opponent. So my next round was like several hours later. I was paired against Nemo, and first game I got black. This match was very, very tough for me because Nemo, I mean, she's a very good blitz player. And I did have to give her odds, so it was like 18 versus 6, so not easy odds at all. And yeah, we got this position. So 2 knights, bishop on d8, queen on f8, bishop on g8. Definitely a very unusual position. I think closer to the chess 960 side of things, the queen on f8. My personal preference is honestly to put the queen on d8 and then shuffle the minor pieces. So king on e8, queen on d8, and then 2 knights, 2 bishops, bishop knight, whatever. Then you'd only have 4 positions, I think, including the starting position. And then it'd still be like some new theory, but it wouldn't be as messy as some of the other positions can get. What are my thoughts on the Nimzo Larsen attack? 1b3. Yeah, very playable, very playable. In chess 960, though, probably not a great move, 1b3 here, because there's no bishop that can go to b2. So here it wouldn't make a ton of sense. But yeah, in normal chess, 1b3, totally fine. Okay, so she goes e4. I went e5. I was not sure how I could get a King's Indian in this setup. So I start with this, maybe I'll put the bishop on f6, but yeah, at this point, this bishop on g8, it's very hard to get a successful King's Indian. So knight c3, knight c6, she goes knight b3, I played f6. Okay, f6 is a little bit ugly, but I think it makes sense in this position, open up the bishop. She goes f4, bishop e7. In general, when the queen started on like f1 and f8, there was a lot of like f4s, f5s, early f6s. It doesn't seem like, the difference, of course, when the bishop is on g8, g1, f2 is no longer the weakest spot in the opening, right? So you don't have these like tactics on f2 and f7. So that's why it's like much easier to justify making these kinds of moves. So anyway, we develop here, knight b4. We have a lot of games to go through, so I'll try not to spend too much time here. But yeah, I was reasonably happy with the position I ended up getting. It's a very weird structure, I gave up the 2 bishops, but I thought I have good control over the center at least, and so I felt okay about my chances. Then I play queen f4. We go for this endgame, and I actually struggled a lot here. I thought I should be fine, but white ends up getting a lot of pressure. Rook e1, then knight c5, takes. I went here, rook f1. And yeah, already here I thought bishop h3 is actually very annoying. But she goes rook f1. I play knight e7 and then bishop h3. And actually all of a sudden I can't defend my position because d7 is hanging. And if I defend it like with this rook, then bishop d6 comes in, followed by maybe bishop c7 or taking this one. Oh, excuse me, they're also just rook takes f6, just immediately winning. So yeah, this was, of course, the bigger point. If this rook comes in, then white can at least grab this pawn or just play like bishop d6. And again, it's very, very awkward. I don't know, maybe this was the best try. I decided to just play d5 and give it the exchange, hoping to get some compensation, like a big center. But of course, I didn't really think it was enough. Like, I have no pawn. White is very solid. And yeah, she starts pushing here on the king side, g4, h4. I can't really take because the rook takes e5. So I went e4, h5, rook b8. I'm just trying to like get my pieces out, but very, very difficult position. She plays d3, which I definitely thought was strong at this point, just opening up the lines. If I take, then rook takes f6, just ends the game, followed by rook e7. So I throw this one in. king b2, we give another check, bishop h4. I'm just trying to like survive at this point. I feel like my position is really, really bad. King e8, I got to go back into the pin just to not allow rook f7. So she goes here, rook e1, king f7, rook e6. I'm just like, basically I'm just trying not to lose the game at this point. Like, not to lose the game in one move. I thought I was going to lose the game most likely because the position is just like dead lost, but I was just trying like not to make it super easy. But then something very interesting happened. She goes bishop d6, I go rook d7, and she goes bishop c5, I play rook c7. So we repeat once, but then she goes rook to d6, and yeah, now I finally got it. I've been wanting to play this repositioning move, knight g8, knight f6 for some time. So I felt like the knight would be really good on f6, defends a lot, it's not a target, it hits g4. And I never had a chance to play it. Finally get a chance to play it here, knight g8. And I'm wanting to go to f6, and I actually thought, okay, maybe I'm getting somewhere. She could still go this rook to e6, and then I'm not sure what I would do. Maybe I'd have to go back to defend this one. But I thought at least, okay, something. But to my surprise, she ends up going rook d6. And this kind of stops knight f6 because of rook e7 check, which would be very unpleasant. But I realized, like, hold on, we already repeated the position once. You know, she played here and then went back. And so this is now twice that we've had this position, right? We had it once here, and then we repeated moves. And so the second time we're getting this position. Then she plays here, knight g8, she goes back. I realized, hold on, if I play knight e7 here, we're actually repeating the position a third time. We're getting this position for the third time. And by the normal rules of chess, you know, you're allowed to claim a threefold repetition and claim a draw. I didn't know if we were allowed to do it in Chess960, but I tried. I figured, like, okay, probably the same rules still apply. So I like stopped the clock. I was like, all right, I think knight e7 is like threefold. You know, I was ready to like get the TD or whatever. You know, maybe they would check the DGT board. But then Nemo was like, okay, I believe you. That's fine. And we agreed to a draw. But it was a legitimate threefold repetition. And yeah, I think people often get confused about this because I think it's like the perpetual check is like the classic example, and it's very confusing. So it's not like you have to repeat the same moves 3 times. Like both sides are moving back and forth and then that's a draw. No, it's threefold repetition of the position. So if the position repeats 3 times, the exact same position, at any point in the game, you know, the repetitions could be like 20 moves apart. Sometimes that happens. You have some like rook and bishop versus rook endgame. The players are going around and around circles, and then all of a sudden they repeat the same position 3 times, just like by accident. A lot of times that happens, like players don't even realize. But yeah, the way it works is like if the same position repeats 3 times, then either player can claim a draw. And it has to be the exact same position. Like what I mean by that, it has to be the same side, right? That's to move, right? So in all these cases, it was white to play in this position. Castling rights have to be the same. En passant rights have to be the same. Yeah. So if you have a position where someone plays, you know, some pawn move g5, and then there's like an en passant available, and then that position gets repeated 2 more times, then it's not really threefold because only in the first position there was like an en passant possibility. The second 2 weren't, right? So it has to be exact same position with all the same rights and privileges for all the pieces. So castling rights, etc. Yeah, you know, if you move your rook and then you move your rook back, no threefold. So yeah, so I got very lucky in this game. So I claimed the draw, it was accepted, and we would play the second game then with the same odds basically, except me having white. So it's kind of like the first match. Now I get white. I was hoping to win this game, and I actually thought I got pretty nice position out of the opening. You know, I played this very safe King's Gambit where the pawn is defended and immediately recapturable. And the reason I went for this here was because I didn't see a way for black to exploit the queen being out early. And this is kind of an interesting thing in chess. Like normally you don't want to bring your queen out early because it gets kicked around. But if your opponent doesn't actually have a way to kick your queen around, then it's not necessarily always bad to bring it out, because queen is a good piece. You know, it puts a lot of pressure. C7, F7, etc. You guys, imagine in the Scotch, right? Like normal position in the Scotch, it's like e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4. When black goes ed4, knight d4, white doesn't mind the trade of knights because the queen comes out to d4. Okay, queen comes out very early, but there's no second knight from b8 to kind of hit the queen with this tempo. Yeah, so it's kind of similar thing here. Anyway, honestly, for me, the most interesting thing about chess 960, chess 18 is the opening. Later on in the game, it explodes, you get some middle game and end game, that's always fun. But like for me, the opening is the most interesting part because this is really where like your creativity shines. You got to figure out like what kind of setup. I mean, this is really where you're trying to outplay the opponent, right? Anyway, I like my position. We end up getting an early endgame, but I have 2 pawns in the center, so I thought this is actually a very, very nice position for white. It's like a king's gambit where white ends up winning back the f4 pawn and is just super happy. And not to mention, like black's bishop on g8 actually ends up being a problem. So h5 is played, I went h3, bishop f6, and then once Nemo played bishop f6, now my whole idea was how do I play against this bishop? Because I was like, on h7, the bishop is very restricted. Yeah, so it's like, maybe I can even get black to play g6. That would be amazing. So that was kind of my idea, just trying to play against this bishop, getting all my pieces out. And yeah, I was really surprised. I definitely expected like f6 at some point. But black goes back, knight e2. And then g6 gets played. And then, yeah, this whole time I was like, Nemo, what are you doing to your bishop? What is this? So I felt very good, but then I end up going very wrong here. After rook e8, somehow I just did not recognize. Okay, I was playing quickly, but I just did not recognize that the knight is threatening to go to f6 and target this pawn. And I really should have done something about it, like maybe h4 here, so that knight g3 I can meet it, knight f6 I can meet with knight g3, and then I think white's position, as long as this bishop stays on g8, I think white's position would be good. But I didn't realize I go knight f4, now knight f6, whoops, e-pawn is hanging, I have to sack it with e5, game gets very messy here, bishop d4, drop my knight back, and yeah, now black is up a pawn, but I still felt like I had compensation just because the pieces are very underdeveloped. Knight g3, rook a5, and yeah, here I really felt like I got my chance with rook e1 because I hit the knight. If bishop takes d4, I take this one with check. King d7 hits the rook, but then I can defend. Okay, bishop f2 is annoying. I can play rook a8, rook b8, and I thought this is unpleasant for black because now bishop is still hanging, and then I have this kind of pin on the 8th rank. But I realize now bishop h7, the rook is actually defended. So this would have been messy. I don't know what's going on here. Takes, bishop takes b7. This one is hanging. This would have been messy, but that was kind of my idea. Instead, black goes bishop h7, but now this allows me to take here and get 2 pieces for the rook. I wasn't totally sure how to evaluate this position though, because black does get the second pawn. So now black has rook and 2 pawns for 2 minor pieces. So yeah, it's an endgame. Very, very difficult position, I think, to evaluate. Bishop on h7 is such a strange piece. But of course, at some point, it's going to get out. Black will play either g5 or f5, bishop g8, and the bishop will get out eventually. I think I would still take white here, but I don't know. It was a tough position to play for sure. Anyways, rook d1, h4, and I end up going very wrong somewhere around here. I mean, I was just trying to improve my pieces. Black goes a5, takes. I play knight h1 here to try to get the knight back to a better square, like f2, h3, f4. But now a very strong move, bishop d5. I very, very much underestimated this one. And this is a great move because it trades off the light squared bishops and it really kind of breaks white's grip on the position. Because without the light squared bishops, my king ends up being a lot weaker. Black gets the e2 square, the rooks can activate. It just changes the whole dynamic of the position. So king f2 takes, or rook check, king here, takes, rook e2, I play knight f2. And now, I mean, I thought it was kind of okay here, possibly if I can get g3 in, get some stability, but unfortunately for me, black is very, very fast here with the counterplay. So c5 and then f4. And I wasn't too upset to see this move because now I can't take with the bishop because I'll lose the knight, but I can take with the king, and then black gives the rook back for the 2 pieces, and we end up in this rook and pawn endgame where I'm only a pawn down. So at this point I'm like, all right, I have to, just try to make a draw. I realized I was in, big trouble. And I definitely misplayed this this endgame. Like, I didn't want to go king g3 here because of rook f6 defending everything. So I wanted to activate my king, but I'm not sure if this was the right call. Actually, it's really hard to say because king g3, rook f6, the problem is my king is cut off and I have no counterplay with the rook. Everything is defended in black's position, and black can just like slowly bring the king in on the queen side and just win the game with an extra king. Extra king is an extra piece. Yeah, my king is just stuck. So I wanted to avoid that. I go king e5, but now just king c7, just defending this one. And g pawn is hanging, c pawn is weak. So I'm already down a pawn. I'm very likely losing a second pawn here. So this was tough. I did my best. I tried g4. So it takes rook g1. I just want to get some counterplay. Rook h2. Takes. Rook f1. No way of saving the pawn. Takes, and king d5. So this was like my idea. I'm like, all right, I have active king, active rook. I'm threatening a check, and then to get to c6, and then maybe I can have some counterplay. But she played this really well. It goes king b7, probably only move to get the king outside the 8th rank. I give this check, king a6, I come in. It still wasn't that easy for black to convert this position because my pieces are very active. King a5, I played here, h4, rook h8, and yeah, hard for black to make progress. So check, king a4, I took this one, king b3. I think this was the correct play, just you got to get the king in and then try to win here. It would have been very hard for black to hold on to this pawn and keep the rook active, so I think this was important. I played c4, king b4, I played here. And yeah, now something very, very weird happened. She starts giving a lot of checks. So rook g5, I go here, she gives this check. I come here, she gives this. She was playing this like really fast, almost like she was kind of like acquiescing to the draw. Because she was winning earlier, now I'm only down 1 pawn, and she didn't see exactly how to make progress. The b pawn is hanging, right? So check here. So she starts getting a lot of checks. I thought, okay, I guess we're just repeating. So check, check, rook g6. And here I realized, okay, if I play king d5, once again, we get 3-time repetition. And I was like, all right, so should I claim it again? I felt kind of bad claiming it the first game because I was completely lost, and all right, I got a very lucky draw. And I was like, all right, do I claim it again? And then I somehow got confused. I thought, oh, maybe it's not 3 times. I forgot how many times we actually repeated. So I played king d5, kind of expecting, all right, she's just going to keep giving, and if she gives one more check, then it's for sure 3 times. But then I hesitated long enough that she played b5, and now actually I think I'm in big trouble here. I think it's actually lost for white. At least I didn't see how to hold it. I could be wrong. Let me check this one with an engine. But with my king cut this way, I didn't really see a way to hold it here. Yeah, engine is saying it's lost here. So I blew my chance in this position. I should have claimed the draw again, and I think it was actually 3 times starting from here. So this was 1, this is 2, and then this would be 3. But of course you have to actually claim it, not just play the move. So b5 takes, and now I don't know what to do because this check is coming, and then black is ready to just advance. If I play this, for example, then rook g5 and c4. I think this is winning for black because the king is just not getting back in time. Like check here, and then rook can come this way, for example, and cut the king off. And yeah, instead I tried king e4, because if I can get the king back, then okay, it will be a draw. But she finds a very precise move, rook d6, and unfortunately, it's just over. The king is cut, and now we're eventually just going to get a Lucina endgame. If the rook was already on f1, then I could give checks from the front, and then I think that'd be holding. Like if you imagine rook b1 check, rook c1, that's very hard for black to make progress. I think white's holding there, but and basically I'm one tempo behind. So rook f1, c4, and now it's too late. Now it's just lost. The king is close enough. The rook doesn't have enough room to give checks, and black's king is just coming in. So we played it out basically, till the end. We're in a bit of time trouble, so I wanted her to demonstrate the Lucina technique, of course, but yeah, actually she didn't have a lot of trouble doing so. Okay, I tried rook b5 here, kind of a trick. I was hoping like, all right, if the rook d5, this is the one idea, my opponent knows I can maybe be a little bit tricky, but the issue with putting your rook on the 5th rank is that, the king actually doesn't even need, the king can just walk out. Like the rook doesn't have enough room to give checks from behind. So check, king comes here, check, king here. I tried this, just to be confusing, but yeah, there's so many winning moves here for black. Rook e1 wins. She played this, and then here, which is also just good enough. If I played king g3, then rook f1 would finish the game. So yeah, this was over. Unfortunately, I had to lose this one. It's a bit of a shame. I really liked my position from the opening, but yeah, eventually just ended up going wrong in the end game. So yeah, that was a tough one. We ended up losing this game. So next round, I was paired against my friend, International Master Eric Rosen, and this was like the prime time round. So we had day one, which was Monday. We had 4 rounds on Monday, although 2 of them I had buys, so I only had two rounds then. But there's supposed to be 4 rounds on Monday. Then Tuesday, we did our big snowmobiling trip that I shared earlier, which was a ton of fun. So after getting back from that, we recovered for a bit. Then we played this like nighttime round, which took place 8:30 p.m. local mountain time. So it was in the evening, 7:30, Pacific, 10:30 Eastern. Anyway, so I was paired against Eric, and we ended up getting this position. And yeah, I forget all the names of the, it's like chess 5 or chess 10, or it was one of them. But basically, this was the starting position: queen on b1, bishop on d1, and yeah, my experience. I looked at some of these positions for a bit. I tried to study a little bit before the event just to see like, okay, what kind of openings we might get or might come up with. And for the most part, I noticed like in the opening, the engines just always prefer either d4 or e4 and just taking space. And in general, that's kind of my strategy with white, try to take a lot of space, because it's really hard for black to figure out how they're going to comfortably develop out of the opening. And so as white, you have a lot more liberty. It's more likely that the tactics are going to work out for you because you have the first move. So, more likely your lead in development should be useful. So I think it's important as white that you do play aggressively. So I started with e4 in this one because it just made sense. You open up this bishop. I thought I might play f3 or f4 as well and open up this bishop. So e4 seemed like a reasonable starting move. And then Eric surprised me. He goes e6. I kind of thought e5 was correct, or good move. It's like knight comes out to e6, and there's no knight on f3 to kind of harass you. But he goes e6. He plays the French, and he spent some time here, and I think his idea was actually pretty clever. So d4, d5. I decide to go e5. Normally I wouldn't play the advance French, but here I figured, okay, I kill this knight, can no longer go to d6. I restrict this bishop. This bishop is also kind of strange. But here is Eric's clever idea, is that he's actually ready to go h6, bishop h7. And if he gets his bishop on this diagonal, well, then that's like a really good French bishop. Normally, French players start off with the bishop here, and they only dream of getting the bishop to this diagonal, right? It happens by accident or just in case white messes up. But here, black gets to get the bishop out very early. So I kind of recognized that was his idea, but I wasn't too worried because I also felt like, it's not just about the bishop. White is still going to have a space advantage here. Anyway, so we end up getting this position, and I'm not sure exactly if I was really better out of the opening. I just think it was very combative position, and essentially we get a French. I get a big space advantage, but black's pieces are a little bit awkward. He takes, I took back. Maybe knight takes was better, honestly, just to support future f5 break, but okay, I took with the pawn. Knight e7, and yeah, basically, you know, I was just trying to get my pieces out here. He goes f5. I thought this was an interesting way to kind of shut white down from playing f5 myself. So he goes f5, and yeah, probably I should have just like gone g4 here. I remember I was watching the commentary afterwards, and they were thinking like, yeah, just white should just go g4 and blow everything up. I played it a little bit slower. I went a3. My idea was that, okay, eventually this move might be useful. It feels like a very slow move, but at the same time, I also wanted to kind of see what Eric was going to do. This move is prophylactic. It's like if black plays knight c6, which I thought is likely, then okay, knight doesn't get this b4 jump, and okay, just a useful move. I didn't want to castle because I thought then minimum black could just play queen c8 and force the queens off, and then I think I would have basically no advantage whatsoever without the queens on the board. I just have nothing to play for without the queens. There would be no attack. So I didn't want to castle and allow that. So a3, Eric goes g5. Played g3. This was definitely sharp. I kind of considered just to lash out with g4 as well. Maybe this would have been interesting, but okay, I thought let's go g3 and just kind of keep the tension. I was still looking for my chance to play g4 later on and just kind of open up the king on e8. He goes king f8, queen d3, queen e8. Finally got a chance to castle and get my king out, a5. And here I really wish I played king b1. This was one of those moments where it's like, all right, I feel like I should play king b1. You know, like my intuition's like, yeah, just go king b1, it's safer. But then my brain was saying like, well, why? Why? You know, why do you need to play king b1? Let him go rook c8 check, let him go, you know, some check, and then I'll go king. You know, why do I need to waste the tempo? And this was wrong. This was, I should have played king b1. Anyway, I convinced myself to go g4 here because it just looks like the time, right? I'm opening everything up. I want to get a rook to the f file and open up the king. He can take on f4, but my idea was to drop back knight g2 and then recapture this pawn. And then I thought the knight would be really strong on f4. If knight g6, then g takes f5, and the position just starts to collapse. But I kind of blundered some stuff here because I didn't realize until, you know, we essentially, and until after I played g4, was that here black could take this pawn using the pin. I just didn't realize this tactic was available. But I don't think it would have been that bad. I think I would take back, bishop takes, knight takes f4, and this to me still felt like I have a lot of initiative, and my king will be safe on b1, a2, and black's king is just going to be caught in the crossfire. So I did think like this was kind of okay. Anyway, he goes a4. And here I play knight c5. I could have, you know, gone back as well, but I actually thought knight c5 was quite strong just to fight for the square, hitting e6 as well. You know, if knight takes, then dc, and then knight comes to f4. But I actually didn't realize like bishop could take. And then after dc, knight takes e5. Like I wasn't really sure about what's going on here because black wins some material. I get queen c3, and I'm putting a ton of pressure on the diagonal. I thought this might be good for white, but I kind of panicked because I really, you know, this wasn't the plan when I played knight c5. I didn't realize, like, I thought like, okay, this one doesn't work because I just take back. I didn't realize you can just take here and then snag this pawn. But okay, this would still be, I think, pretty annoying because you got bishop d4 coming, rook e1, knight takes f4, and black just has so many weaknesses on the e file. So I did feel like there would be some reasonable play here. But that said, after bishop takes c5, and we didn't have a lot of time at this point, I think like 3-4 minutes each left, I had a very interesting idea. You know, how about instead of recapturing, what if I just take this one? And so this is, I mean, this is honestly kind of a fortunate shot. I don't even know if this was the best move. For all I know, dc5 is certainly good enough, but I thought this was a very creative move because I'm like, I just gave up a piece. You know, bishop is like, all right, that knight is yours, but I want to take on e6 with check and just kind of destroy black's kingside, right? If I get knight e6, gf5, I thought this would be really nice. So if the bishop moves out, then I'm taking here, and that just looks great. And otherwise, I'm ready to take my piece back, and everything looks super strong. So I was really quite happy when I found this, because now I felt like white's getting a huge attack. He played knight g6, and I took this one, queen takes, and I could take back on c5, but then I thought, oh, let's throw this in as well. But I actually had to calculate here very, very precisely, and I was quite happy with my calculation, because I didn't have a lot of time, but I felt like I was very precise. Of course, I could just take on c5 right away, but I thought this would be stronger if I can get this in. Because number one, if queen takes, then we go for the endgame. I go dc5, and I thought this would have been very, very unpleasant for black, because d pawn is hanging, a lot of black's pawns are weak, my pawns are actually pretty strong. If knight takes e5, black likely just gets killed on the dark squares. It wouldn't be super easy, you know, there's like some knight d3 checks and stuff, so I have to be kind of careful. But for example, I could take here, and then bring the rook to e1, and I think the bishop would be way, way stronger than the knight, you know, such an open position. So this I was, you know, very happy to go into. So the key line was queen g5 check. And now the point is, if I go bishop e3 tempo, which seems very tempting, there is knight takes e5 that you have to account for. Or takes, black takes on e3 with check and keeps an extra piece. So it's not a guarantee, actually, I'm even keeping the extra piece. But I managed to find bishop e3, knight takes e5, queen c3. Very, very strong move, very important move. I think only move in the position that gives white a win. Because I just get my queen out of the way, all of black's pieces are still hanging, and then very importantly, this one's hanging with check. So here I'm pretty much guaranteed to win my piece back, which is great, because that means that black's king is going to be left super open. And of course, after DC as well, then the queen opens up, and so this is, yeah, I just didn't see a way for black to survive here. Okay, sorry, I'm visiting Jesse in Baltimore. That's why there's an ambulance. I don't even know if you guys heard the sirens, but I heard them. So Eric goes queen e7, and yeah, I thought this was maybe the best try, but now just d takes c5, and black's position essentially just completely falling apart. So you try knight f7, takes. I think white has a lot of ways to proceed here. I just tried to bring all my pieces to the center of the board and then set up some kind of c6, bishop c5 breakthrough. Essentially, when the king is this open on f8, you know, it's just impossible for black to survive. And yeah, the game ended in a couple moves, bishop c5, and that was the first game. So yeah, I felt pretty good about this win. You know, it was a pretty exciting game. I definitely felt like I made a ton of mistakes throughout, I'm sure, but you know, it's always nice to get a win against a good player. Then in game 2, Eric would take white in the same position. He also went e4. I went e5. And we got a different style of position here. He goes for c3, kind of like Ponziani style. He's playing to set up a strong center with d4, and this is a surprisingly effective approach in this position. Normally c3, d4 doesn't seem like too much, but here it's like, okay, it's actually very hard for black to stop this. I tried knight e6, he goes knight e2, and he just wants to take space. I was a little cheeky here. I played bishop e7, so my idea was that on d4 I could take and go bishop b4 check, where it'd be kind of annoying for white to deal with this. If knight d2, you know, maybe I can just take and play some position like this. Dude, king would be kind of like a little bit exposed on d2. I'm not really sure if this would, I still feel like white would actually be better here. Like f3, you just take total control over the center. But okay, it's something for white to think about. Anyways, he goes f3 first, f6. Now he goes d4, because now takes. This check would not be nearly as good. White can just go knight c3. Everything is defended. So c6, I just keep developing, you know, controlling the center. Bishop b3, I went a5, kind of poking around. Bishop drops back. We end up getting a structure actually kind of resembles like Italian game a little bit. You know, got the bishop on c2, pawn on c3. But black's setup here, I wasn't quite fond of. You know, I had to play this move g6. I don't know if this was necessary, but the knight was coming into f5, and yeah, I certainly didn't like the looks of that. So yeah, d5 now. Eric goes f4. I'm just blowing open the center. And this is the kind of example of why I feel like it's a lot easier to play white in 960, because it's like, yeah, a lot of times you just get a big space advantage. You blow things open, and yeah, it feels very weak for black, this whole construction. Anyways, I took knight takes, bishop takes, I castled. I felt like it's maybe not that easy for white to actually break through here. He takes on d5, very logical. If bishop takes d5, then he's, of course, just going to sack, and this should be a winning sacrifice. I didn't even calculate this. It's just a matter of like, it's just a matter of looking at the position and knowing that you don't want this, you know. But yeah, most likely winning for white. So it takes on d5. He goes f5, g5. Yeah, somehow I managed to like not quite collapse here, and I even set up some counterplay with knight to b5, hitting the bishop. He drops back, and now a3, and white structure on the queen side starts to feel very shaky. He goes rook e1, queen d8, bishop d3. I drop back. I felt very, very strange playing like this, but I didn't quite see what was wrong with my position until he played c4, and then things got quite difficult, because now he's opening up this diagonal. I did manage to kind of squeeze my way out. So knight d6. This one's still hanging, so he goes b3. Takes. I went knight f7. Now aiming for this e5 square. Bishop d4. And this move, probably not great, because white kind of sets up, you know, some difficulties for himself. I go knight h6. This might have been overlooked by Eric, because now you know, the queen starts getting chased around. So queen e4, bishop c6. If he takes on e7, then queen takes d4 check, queen e3. We get some endgame like this where I thought black would be actually pretty comfortable. I wasn't sure like if I'm better or what, but I thought it'd be a comfortable endgame. You know, very strong bishop here on c6. Maybe this rook to keep this one defended. But instead he goes queen e6 check, rook f7, knight e2. Yeah, it kind of holds everything for the moment. And yeah, I wasn't quite sure how to continue here. I think probably I should go like bishop d7. If here, bishop c6 back, and you know, we might repeat, or here maybe he'll go back like queen e3. And yeah, I thought I should be fine here. But I end up blundering with queen d6, which is unfortunate, because it's actually pretty simple for white. He just takes and goes c5. I just missed it. You know, it looks simple, but I didn't see it. I was looking at other moves. I saw queen d6. Oh, queen d6 looks safe. I played it, and all of a sudden, takes, bishop c4 is coming, and black is losing the exchange. I tried to defend a little bit, but Eric's technique, I think, was very, very good. I don't think he gave me any chances here. We'll just play through the rest of the game, but yeah, I was like kind of forced to trade rooks here if I wanted to win any material. But once the rooks come off, it's very, very hard for black, because this a pawn is super hard to defend, and yeah, I wasn't able to set up any kind of fortress or anything. So we played on, but eventually the rook came in, bishop comes in, and yeah, I was trying to trade off pawns, but nothing was working. If takes, knight takes, rook f5 check, of course, so it's just nothing to do. But if this one, the problem was white had a6. So at this point, it's, yeah, not really able to hold this position, because here a6, if takes, there's rook e6 and winning the bishop. So yeah, it's basically lost, and game was over in a couple moves. I resigned here. So yeah, we end up splitting the match 1-1. Definitely some really interesting games. We both win as white. And yeah, in both games, I felt like white just had, you know, easier position to play out of the opening. But then, okay, it got messy. It was, of course, very, very tricky. So next round, round 4 for me, I'm paired against GMCanty. And we get this position, chess 2, where just the knights and bishops are switched. I decided to go with d4 here, and my plan was to follow up with either c3 or c4 and open up this bishop as well. And then for this guy, I don't know, maybe h3, bishop h2, maybe f3 somewhere, I wasn't sure. So Canty goes c6, and I decided to play e4, taking the center. I was expecting d5, and then I was probably going to go like c3, e4, something like this. But he goes c6, so I go e4, plays d5, okay. Caro Khan, e5. queen b6. Like actually, yeah, this is a real line, queen b6 in the advanced Caro. Here, it makes sense. It hits the b2 pawn. But I felt like, just knight b3, and I'm fine here. I defend the pawn, and my knight is well placed, controlling the c5 square. So I didn't really think this was such a great achievement for black. So a5, a4, he goes knight d7. I played f4. And yeah, we're getting kind of a French here. He goes f6, opening up the bishop, and I'm just trying to develop kind of similar setup to what I did against Eric. Knight e3, bishop f2, c3, bishop a7. I castled. This was the problem I felt like for black. Like the dark square bishop was very, very restricted, and it would be a while for black to get like c5 in and be able to open up the bishop. This bishop not bad, like kind of defending the king side, but yeah, my plan was to try to get f5 in, king h1, g4, just attack on the king side. So king h1, knight e7, bishop c2, queen c7, knight d2. And this is why I felt like, chess 18, it's cool. Okay, we reached this position. This looks like a normal position. This looks like straight up we could have gotten this out of a French, at a Caro-Kann, like chess 1. It's a very, very normal structure, it's an instructive game. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot of instructive value in playing these. It was almost like a little middle game sparring. So c5, knight f3. And he takes, at this point, fe5. And yeah, now I was kind of considering bishop h5 here for black, but then white could either play g4, or I was thinking this move might be possible. I didn't end up checking this one, but I thought this might be interesting, because after king takes, knight g5 check, king h6 or king g6, I can take here, hitting the queen, and then bishop takes d1, knight takes c7, bishop is hanging, rook is hanging. I wasn't sure exactly how the tactics here are going to work out, but a lot of stuff is hanging, so I thought this was maybe interesting, but I'm not sure if I'm really getting enough here. Maybe rook c8, knight e6 or something. Anyway, I am not sure if I was going to take. I think g4 also is very possible. But in any case, he goes bishop g6. And here I started calculating, because I realized there's some potential here with knight g5 and e6 hanging and also h7 hanging. So I played knight g5 immediately. This was also an option to take first and then go knight g5. I think essentially it would probably transpose into the game, but yeah, that was the idea. Hit this one, set up queen h5, hitting h7, and just posing problems. So I play knight g5. He goes rook f e8, and I could take on e6 here. I think black's idea was probably play like queen c6, and then game continues. So I thought this was okay, but I realized taking here and queen h5 might even be stronger. Actually, more specifically, takes, and then takes. Because now queen h5, black would have knight f8 in defending, or let's say this knight. Even, I don't know, here, queen f7. Okay, this was also possible, because knight f8, I still have this, and I can win a pawn. But at least black's knight here is a little bit closer to the defense. So I think knight takes h7 first I think this was more accurate. Because now king takes, I give this check. He didn't have to take, but then, okay, I'm playing queen h5 anyway, knight g5, and black's king is still very, very exposed. So he takes, queen h5. I take here. He takes on d4. I actually already had calculated this. My original idea was to take back, and then on bishop takes d4, knight g4. I thought this would be very, very devastating for black. Knight h6 check coming, and the king just looks super, super exposed. But then once I got here, I realized, actually, hold on, maybe I can just play knight g4 first. And I did a little bit of calculation here, but I realized, okay, this one is very good. I have knight h6 as a threat. Knight f6 is also possible. And if knight takes e5, I thought this was critical. I was going to give check and just take this one. Because now after takes, I'm up full rook. And so, yeah, it's just immediately game over. So knight g4, I don't think black has a defense here. He tried queen d8, but now knight h6 check. And yeah, black resigned here, because if king h8, there's knight f7 winning the queen. If king f8, there's bishop h4 minimum. And yeah, king is just getting mated here. So yeah, first game ended up winning. Felt Felt pretty good about this one. Maybe one of my better games of the event. Game 2, I was black. He goes e4. I decided to play e5 because, yeah, with this setup, very hard to get the King's Indian here. So e4, e5, he goes c3, c5. I thought this was kind of an interesting way to develop here. Of course, my idea is to control d4 and not let white get the d4 break-in without a lot of trades. And I do give up the d5 square, but I felt like, you know, kind of Sveshnikov style, I can maybe defend this square. I have knight e7, I have f6, so I thought I could kind of keep control. So knight e3, knight e7, we develop our pieces, you know, normally, as you can see. He goes for this early knight f5, which makes sense. If I take, then c5 is going to be hanging. So I played d6, and yeah, I think James kind of misplayed the opening here, because now I was able to take on f5 and go knight c7, and here I felt really good about my position, because b6, d5, you know, I felt like I have a ton of space here, and I have nice control over the d5 square. It's kind of like my chances. He goes d4, knight d5, c4, I start taking a lot of space, queen d7, and yeah, I felt like my position out of the opening was quite reasonable. Here comes a critical moment. He goes f4, trying to open up his pieces. I played rook e8, bishop c2, and I kind of go basically all in here. I play e4. It just looked too tempting to avoid. I get like such a nice pawn on e4, knight on d5 looks beautiful. I'm like pushing e3. I realized it would be risky. Knight g3, I push, bishop c1, because, like, you know, he has the e4 square. So now if I'm slow here, you know, trying to get my bishop out, like, he can cover up, go bishop e4, maybe try to pick up the pawn. So I really felt like I had to justify my play. And then I go all in again, and I just push e2. And what I'd calculated was that after takes, bishop h5, I thought I'm getting some very reasonable pressure here. Right, rook f2, queen e7, just piling up on the pin. He goes king f1, which I thought, okay, pretty much forced. Now we come in with knight e3, takes. And so this was kind of my idea when I sacked the pawn with e2. I was like trying to get this position. I thought it was really interesting. You know, I'm down a pawn, but I have a ton of pressure. And I've got the two bishops. You know, his extra pawn is doubled, so how useful can it be, really? I didn't see his next move, though, queen e1. And I didn't realize that he can actually unpin with knight g3 and then force me to actually go for the endgame. But thankfully, it kind of works out here for me. I go d5, knight g3. We trade and go for the endgame, bishop f7. And despite being a pawn down, once we got here, I realized, like, I didn't actually feel worse. Like, it's really hard for white to prove that the extra pawn is actually valuable. But in the meantime, I've got two bishops. They cover all the entry squares. No way for white to get in on the e-file. And I just want to go bishop d6, b5, b4, create a weakness, rook b8. I just want to play the position as if I'm not down a pawn. I just have two bishops and a comfortable situation. And it ended up kind of working out nice for me. g3, I start pushing, and yeah, it's just not easy for white to do much here. I just started slowly building up. b4. Very unusual position where white just has like clear extra pawn, but it doesn't seem to have a lot of value. Bishop d1, rook a2, and yeah, I was definitely playing for a win here. Basically just trying to keep everything active, win this pawn back, keep the rooks on the board, and eventually win with the passed c-pawn. So yeah, he tried to kind of, you know, untangle here, but black is just pretty much too active. g4, I gave this check, king f2. I could take this one here, but I thought c3 is just kind of stronger. And now I'm ready to push c2 and essentially win a piece. He played g5. I went king f8 just to get out of the pin. And yeah, I actually don't have the rest of the moves here. I don't remember if he might have resigned at this point. I'm not really sure. Or maybe we played a couple more moves and then he resigned. But yeah, it's basically over because now c2 is coming. I'm going to win a full piece, and then the extra piece is just a winning endgame. So yeah, I felt pretty good about this one. I thought this was like one of the more interesting games, especially like, this position looked so nice. But yeah, I wasn't actually quite sure if I had enough. I am curious about the evaluation here. So yeah, Engine does like black in this position a little bit. After knight g3. Okay, actually it's saying like equal. So e3 only move. And then here, okay, black had some options. e2 definitely not totally necessary, but just curious about this endgame. Knight e3 maybe wasn't the best. Apparently I had a lot of other moves. b5. Yeah, actually that's true. Why am I giving up this knight on d5? Maybe knight e3 was a little bit premature. I don't know. Anyway, so queen e1. And yeah, it turns out this endgame. No, white is better. White is better. But I guess he didn't quite find the right plan. Ooh, maybe knight f1, knight e3. Maybe, yeah, white should put the knight on e3, bring the bishop around to f3. Then I can see white being better, because then white would have an actual target. That makes sense. Yeah, probably knight f1, knight e3 was the way to go. Okay, and then once we get a couple moves in, then black essentially is already fine. At this point, black is already better, which is interesting. All right, so round number 5. I'm playing my friend Gauri Shankar, aka GrandmasterGauri. You guys probably know him on Twitch as such. Super nice guy, super fun. We were hanging out basically the whole time there, and we've actually played a bunch of times. I don't think we've ever like made a quick draw or anything. Like we always just have big fights. So yeah, in this game we started with this position, which to me is like very, very pretty. Like I really like this position. Like 2 bishops on the right side, 2 knights on the left side. It feels like a very dynamic position. Like the things that are about to just open up. But okay, I decided to go d4 and get this kind of Queen's Gambit type of position. Once again, I offered the pawn. I don't know if it was, I'm sure it's possible for black to take, but you go e4 or knight c3, just kind of play this style. Gauri decided to play more solid with e6. And we actually ended up getting like a very normal looking position. Bishop b4, it's like some kind of pseudo Nimzo-Rogozin structure. But yeah, h3, h6, I thought this was all logical. I would say actually in this game, I did not get an opening advantage. Maybe this was the only game I played where white was not like clearly better out of the opening. Because here I actually thought black is fine. He goes bishop d6, he trades off these bishops, we're trading these bishops. And generally the structure is like famous Carlsbad structure. Without the bishops, black is kind of supposed to be totally fine. So yeah, I didn't get much, but I tried to play the normal plan here with knight a4, knight c5, and now like this position, okay, straight up, like this is just like a normal. I wouldn't be surprised if we transpose to some game like Gelfin Adams or something. Just like this could be like a totally normal position, which is kind of funny. So, all right, knight c5. I think things were essentially pretty much equal here. At some point, though, I do get a bit of an advantage. I think at this point, we pinpointed after the game, we thought this might have been wrong. Because knight e4, I go b4. And now I'm getting the minority attack on the way. And black doesn't really actually have any clear counterplay on the king's side. So he goes back knight d6. I play b5, sacking the pawn in order to get queen c5 in. And hitting this one, hitting the knight, hitting the pawn. He goes a6 takes. So here I actually thought my position was very comfortable because we have equal material, but I thought I have my 2 pawns in the center are going to be stronger than his queen side. But yeah, we end up going for this endgame here, and I allow the doubling of the pawns. I didn't think this was such a big deal, my pawns are still kind of strong in the center, but yeah, I'm sure I could have played this phase better than I did. Isn't the d6 bishop essential for stopping the minority attack? I guess you could you could say that it's helpful. Black's dark squared bishop is definitely a good piece. But black can't really stop the minority attack in the long run. Like eventually white always kind of gets it in. So I would say it's a good piece, but it doesn't really like make or break black's position. So black can often trade it off, no problem. So yeah, we end up getting this endgame, knight d5, rook a5, and yeah, here Gauri makes very bold decision to go b5. Because his knight was under attack, he decides to sacrifice one of his pawns, but activate his rook, and then activate the second rook. And yeah, this ended up being very, very tough to deal with. And I definitely went wrong. I'm not sure what the best defense was here. Maybe rook b1, maybe knight c6 first, or e4. But I play here, and I essentially miscalculated. Because my idea was to trade off a pair of rooks, but I totally missed this very strong move, rook c8, where he keeps the back rank, and then after the trade, his rook gets behind the pawn, and now the b pawn is very strong, and unfortunately, I'm just like not able to stop it. Like knight d3, he pushes. Probably should have just gone like knight b2 here, and then I'm guessing I'm still totally fine here as white. Yeah, I think knight b2. So this is where I miscalculated again. I go rook c1. He pushes b2, and at first I thought I could play here, but then I didn't realize he has this one, rook b3. And then knight takes b2, knight c3, and black is winning a piece because I don't have rook c1 in view of knight e2 check. So after rook b3, I can go knight c5, but then the issue is black goes knight c3 anyway, which was a real killer. And then after takes, the knight isn't going to be able to stop the b pawn, which was a big deal. So after b2, all of a sudden, whoops, rook b1, rook b3, black is winning. So I decide to take to give the knight because I figure I'm going to have to just give the knight anyway. And I try to, save this endgame, but it's only 2 pawns for the knight, and all the pawns are close to each other. So it's really not enough. I didn't have any real chances of saving this position. Black was able to pick up 1 pawn. And yeah, just kind of keep dancing around with the knight. And here after rook d3, it's already over because there's just no way to push the pawn. Like rook d8, d7, everything just gets stuck. And black is ready to just push the g pawn. And okay, I like king f4, but it takes, and yeah, game over. So yeah, unfortunate loss. I think this was my first, no, not my first loss with white, but yeah, tough endgame here. And then in game 2, Gauri got white in the same position. He decided to start with e4, and in this game I actually went with the French. I used to play the French many years ago, and I dropped it. I got out, thankfully, and haven't played the French since. But okay, in this position, kind of made sense. Again, this bishop can go to h7. My knights are close to the queen side, so French setup actually seemed kind of reasonable. And so we end up getting this French with h6. H6 actually is a move, but here it makes more sense. Knight b3, I went here. f3, bishop b4, playing kind of winnower style. He played e5, and I decided to take right away before white has a chance to play queen d2 and not double the pawns. And this was actually a surprisingly difficult position. I actually thought I'm doing reasonably well here because my bishop is very much outside the pawn chain. I'm going to get c5 in eventually, and it felt like a nice winnower, but actually ended up struggling quite a bit. So bishop d3 was played, bishop f2. We both kind of start developing. I went a5 here, a4, b6, and yeah, essentially what happened, position was quite reasonable. c5, bishop b5. We end up getting this. And like, this I think is not necessarily that bad for black, but I just totally misplayed it. Like, I didn't know how to deal with the pressure. I was kind of thinking after the game, probably I should have just like traded the bishops and then played that position. So rather than c5, just take first and then maybe c5. Because what we end up getting here is like white's bishop on b5 just kind of totally freezes the queen side. And then I'm not able to deal with this like incoming king side attack. So I go knight c6, you play bishop h4. And Engine seems to think like my position's not that bad here, like it's still holdable, but white's attack ended up happening very, very quickly. So f4. And okay, here the Engine starts to understand that black is actually in trouble. So yeah, my feeling is that the Engine doesn't quite appreciate how difficult this position actually is for black, because white's getting f4, white's getting g4, the attack is building up, and black just has no counterplay on the queen side. And yeah, in practice, this was actually super, super tough. So yeah, and I think I'm already basically lost here. Yeah. So we got this. He repeated once, then went back. And yeah, eventually just got f5 in. And okay, I went for the only plan with knight c8, knight a7, just to kind of go after the rook, but f6, very strong. Sacrificing the exchange just to get the dark squares on the king side. And okay, only move here was g5, which was very ugly, but definitely should have been played. Still, white can kind of open everything up with h4, maybe bring the rook back first, but yeah, this is what I had to do. But okay, I took the rook, takes, and now f takes g7. And actually what I missed here is I didn't realize that white's next move is just queen takes h6. I thought like, okay, maybe he goes knight h5, knight f6 check, I'll take here, and then some mess. But no, actually, white takes on h6 first. That's his next move. And then knight h5, knight f6 is just mate. So when we got to this position, I started thinking, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm just completely lost. And there's nothing I can do. If I take, then of course knight comes in with check. And then queen is going to be taking here, or like king g6, bishop h4. This one is coming. Oh, actually, Engine points out a very nice mate here with queen takes h6. Okay, I didn't see this one, but yeah, this would be a beautiful way to finish. Fantastic. But okay, there are many ways for white to win at this point. So yeah, after takes and takes on g7, I just resigned here because we're just getting mated, and there's no defense whatsoever. So yeah, tough match. I ended up losing that one 0-2. I felt good. I beat Canty 2-0, but then immediately lose to Gauri 0-2. But Gauri, he ended up having a very good tournament. He was the eventual second place finisher. So the next match, I was originally supposed to play Grandmaster Larry Kaufman. But as I mentioned, he ended up getting sick and had to drop out of the tournament. So he was actually replaced by Grandmaster Kayden Troff, who's younger and very, very strong. So for this one, we didn't do any odds. We just played straight up, 12 minutes each. We started with this position with 3 minor pieces on the queen side and then queen and knight. I think the first position where we had the queen on the g file. And yeah, he started with d4, I went d5, c3, c6. We both kind of open up our bishops. I'm playing copycat chess because I don't really see why not. f3. Okay, now I decided to go knight g6, play for e5. This was definitely a very unusual game. Like the structure we got was quite tricky. He goes h4, h5, I drop egg here, and takes, knight f2. I went bishop f5, trading off light square bishops, takes, He goes g4, knight d6. When we got this position, I was like, all right, what is this? Like, like I had no idea. Like, I thought I'm pretty solid, but like I also was worried like I'm gonna get my bishop trapped here in like 2 moves. So it's very tricky structure to figure out. But I thought I did okay pretty much. Queen f8, bishop drops back, knight e6. It feels like white played some kind of strange, like Jobava London almost, you know, like f3, bishop f4, and black is just having like a very solid Slav setup. Anyway, he takes, knight f5, and at this point I wanted to castle, but a7 is hanging, so I felt like I couldn't do that just yet. I thought it should be good for black. There should be a fine position for black, but I ended up going g6 here. I don't know if this is necessary, but it seemed okay. He takes here. I got to go fg, and he castles, and then I castle kingside. And so I thought I'm okay in this position because, all right, the h file is open, but I do have the 7th rank, so I can defend h7. I can double on the f file. I have this nice f4 square I can use. The g-pawn might be a weakness. So I thought it's pretty reasonable. That said, it was very difficult. Queen g4, I played here. King b1. I brought the rook in. And then you went e4. Very nice move, actually. So the point being, if I took, I believe he was going to respond knight f2 here. Opening up the rook against the queen and then threatening, or getting ready to take back on e4 with the knight. And then knight e4, knight tries to hop into f6. You know, that can be very, very scary. So instead I played here, looking to trade the queens. And he decides to go for it. He takes. I take here. Takes on d5. Takes, rook takes. And yeah, I do end up giving a pawn here because if rook takes g4, rook d7, I definitely was very concerned about allowing his rook on the 7th rank. You know, I could play something like rook g2, looking for my own counterplay, but like rook e1 as well. Like, okay, you can't take here, right? Because mate immediately. But what I didn't like is, okay, you can actually just take here, defend this guy, and I don't really have any counterplay. So, you know, why would go a3? You know, just like, you know, secure the king. He can also start pushing his queen side, and then the 7th rank is never going anywhere, right? He can take over the 7th rank whenever he wants to. So I felt like this is probably just lost for black. So instead I went rook e7, and we get a difficult rook endgame. Like, I'm down a pawn, but I thought I have reasonable drawing chances. And yeah, things end up going like this. He takes, gives this check, comes here, I take, and so I end up getting my pawn back because he kind of messes up a little bit, but he still keeps some pressure here. And I played rook g7, which I think was not right. Definitely think I should have played either king f7 or given this check and then played like g5 or something. But rook g7, this actually turns out super awkward because now he gives check and he comes here. And the point is that he's starting to give check, take this rook. Number one, he's starting to give check, king f6, and then rook f8 check, just winning a full rook. But other than that, he's also threatening to trade rooks and then give rook d7 check and pick up this pawn. And then he gets like 3 versus 1 on the queen side, and it's very, very, it looks very tough. I mean, probably he wins the other pawn as well. So I actually ended up burning like all my time here. I was up a little bit on time, and I figured like I have to be super precise, and I found a nice chance. I played rook f5. And now the point is, after he gives check and check, I have king e6. And because my rook is here, I'm not losing a rook. Like, he can take one rook, but then I'll take the other rook. So whatever rook he doesn't take, I'll take the other one. So he takes on g7, I take here, and now he has a choice. He can either take on g6 or take on a7. This one is very safe. This is what he ends up doing, and we get this 3 versus 2 rook endgame. But I was definitely more afraid of rook takes a7. But he basically just didn't have enough time, I think, to go for this one, because it is a little bit scary. Black goes rook g8, and that would have been my plan, just to start pushing the pawn. But during the game, I was very worried that he can, let's say, go here, take, and my feeling was that white is not risking to lose this and has decent winning chances. So eventually he's going to have to give up the rook for the pawn. But in the meantime, he has 3 passers on the queen side that he can just start pushing. And so I felt like white's not really risking to lose here. So for example, I don't know, rook d6, let's say here, and then the king starts coming out. And yeah, let's say we get something like this. Takes, rook takes, king c4. I don't know. I would think black is never winning this. Okay, engine says draw with best play. So maybe it would have been a draw anyway, but yeah, definitely black is never winning. And I think, you know, these pawns in time pressure, it feels a little bit easier, right? To have, you just push the pawns, right? So, but okay, as long as white's not losing, then of course he could have gone for this. Maybe would have been a better try. He takes this one. And here I thought this is a pretty straightforward draw because this is just 3 versus 2. He definitely tried for many moves to squeeze out a win, but it's not that hard to hold as black. You just try not to allow anything. Okay, he played b4 here because it just wasn't making any progress. And he could have taken with the pawn, wouldn't make a huge difference. But yeah, basically just try not to blunder something, and it's really hard to lose this as black. If you don't blunder, you don't lose, basically. And yeah, eventually we agreed to a draw. So first game was drawn. So that was good. I felt good about that one. Drawing with a GM was certainly not easy. Next game, I would take white. And this was an unfortunate game. So all right, we started off the same way, actually. And then here, instead of f3, which he played, I went for knight g3. He goes h5. I went e4. He goes h4. So it's actually like a reverse of our previous. In the other game, he also went for this like h5, h4, and I put my knight on e2. But yeah, I felt like my position is okay here. We're both just kind of developing. Knight f6, bishop f3, knight e6. And yeah, here, unfortunately, I just like missed his threat. I didn't realize he's threatening something. I thought like, okay, it's still opening, we're developing. And I pretty, like, unfortunately quickly played this move, g3. I mean, it wasn't that quick. I think it was like 10, 15 seconds, but it was faster than it should have been. Well, my idea was just like open up the queen, give a square for the bishop, look at this guy a little bit. You know, it seemed like a very reasonable move. But then he hits me with knight g5. This is move 9. Knight g5 happens, threatening knight takes f3, game over. And I was like, oh, okay, knight g5. I'm sure I have a move here. Let's take a look at my options. Queen g2, well, there's h3. And I'm like, ooh, that's not good. And then the queen has to go somewhere. And knight takes f3 is just game over. And I'm like, all right, that's not working. Okay, bishop g2, probably I can play this. Nope, there's h3. And if bishop f1, knight f3, you lose the queen, game over. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's bad luck. Surely I must have some move here that like saves the game. No, actually, no, there's nothing. And then bishop is just like trapped. And then I was like, oh, I found something. Queen g2, h3, bishop takes c6 check. Yes, I'm out. Takes, queen takes, rook is hanging. I can do this. No, not so fast. King moves, king f8, and that's it. I can't hold on to the bishop. I'm just losing material. The queen has to, every square is covered. Queen has to move, and then black will take and just have clear extra piece. So yeah, on knight g5, white can resign. It's just like, it just gave it. So that's, yeah, that's the danger of playing, you know, unfamiliar positions. Sometimes you just get caught. So I could have resigned here. I decided to try the trickiest thing I could find, which was bishop takes first, and then queen here. It's not enough. I'm sure black has like a million ways to win here, but I was like, all right, let's try something, right? Just I'm attacking the pawn. Maybe I'll take another pawn next move. it's still chess 960. Something, crazy might happen. But Kayden, he converted very well. Just knight e4. And now he's threatening bishop h3, which would just end the game for, getting knight f3 check in next. So I tried this, but now he just takes. He takes this one. His rook is opened up. So it's over. I tried this. Takes, knight f5. Okay, some trickiness. I have some threats. I'm threatening to take the knight, forcing knight takes, queen takes c6, and then I would get the rook. Okay, that could be nice. Yeah, he ends up finding a very nice move here, rook h2. If takes, knight f3 check, wins the queen. And I play queen f1, he goes rook f2, and then I was like, okay, just like no more, please. I can't take it anymore. Now it's just like knight f3 is coming in. I'm down a full rook. Position's terrible. Like I was like, all right, yeah, resign. And I think it was a pretty fair, pretty good spot to end the game. So yeah, that was a tough one. That was definitely my worst game of the tournament. But all right, what are you gonna do? It's chess 960. It happens. It happens. Okay, so last round, I'm up against the big dog, the top seed, Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, and going into this round, he was actually 2 points behind Gauri, who I played a few rounds prior, and so he would need at least 3 from this match to win. Which was very doable because we were doing the soccer scoring system. So a win was worth 3 points and a draw was worth 1 point. So basically he would need 1 win and he would pass Gauri, who had basically a bye in the final round, and win the tournament. Okay, and yeah, like I mentioned before, originally, he was supposed to give us odds against like the IMs. But then Gauri and Eric, they didn't take odds. They just wanted to play straight up. So I felt like, all right, I guess I'll play straight up as well. So we didn't take odds. But as a result, we got some very, very interesting battles. So I think it was worth it. So our game goes e4, e5, knight c3, c6. And then here Daniel plays very interesting move, bishop g4. And it's like, it feels like such a strange move at first glance. It's like bishop g4, like what? Where is this going, right? Like what is this bishop really targeting? Like d7 is not a weakness, yeah? But it's actually, I think, a very interesting move because, okay, he's making it hard for black to develop. Like I can't push the d pawn, of course. I can't go d6 or d5. And after h5 and knight e6, he ends up taking, which I kind of expected. And at the same time, it was like, I wasn't sure if he was really going to take, but I did kind of fear this, to be honest. I mean, it's a weird exchange. He takes, but now it's like, however I take back, I get these double pawns. And essentially what we get here is like a weird Rossolimo. It's like a Rossolimo structure. Rossolimo is like in normal chess, bishop b5, and the Sicilian, bishop takes c6. Then black gets these weird double pawns, and then the light squared bishop is often a problem piece on the queen side. Here, it's a problem piece on the king side. But basically, like, the bishop is just not getting out. Like, this pawn is stuck, the e pawn is stuck. If I put my bishop on h7, it's just heavily, heavily restricted. So this structure already is difficult. I imagine black is fine objectively, but like, yeah, already kind of a hard position, I think, to play. So I go f5. I don't know. Probably this was risky. He goes f4. F4 actually blew my mind. I was like so sure he was gonna play f3 because I thought like, okay, that's his plan, right? He's just playing to restrict the light squared bishop, and I'm sure this is fine and white is better. But f4 really excellent move because he's actually just like opening things up. And somehow my pieces are like not capable of dealing with it. King is on e8. Intuitively, I didn't think I was in trouble here yet because, okay, white's king is also in the center. But actually, it was very, very hard to defend this position. I'd be curious what the big stockfish thinks. And okay, it likes ef4 here and queen c7, and says black is kind of okay, but no, it still looks better for white. White drops back, queen f2, queen f3, and yeah, my structure is pretty weak. But anyway, I definitely completely misplayed it. I gave this check, thinking I was like kind of inducing a weakness, you know, bishop f6, and there may be some light squares, but takes, and queen e3. And this was actually very, very annoying because now he's threatening e takes f5, ef5, d4. And I lose the piece. And if I move the bishop, then just like e takes f5 and he's winning a pawn. So I didn't know how to deal with this. I guess c5 actually makes sense, threatening bishop d4. I didn't quite realize this one, but c5, okay, gives up a pawn like this. I guess black can take and take on c3, but yeah, so I pretty much immediately go wrong here. I go bishop. I was just trying to castle, just get my king out of the center. Takes here, but my dark squares are just way too weak. Daniel plays f6, which is extremely intuitive and powerful, just opening up all the dark squares here. And yeah, essentially I just couldn't survive this. Takes, queen comes into h6, and now I'm just getting brutally mated here. Knight d7, he played bishop d4. I went e5, and now g4. So very, very interesting sack. If takes, then gh5, and the rook is coming into g1. Maybe it was possible to take and actually move the bishop here and try to run with the king. I gave this check first. King d2, took, and I played rook e5, which apparently is the only move here. Honestly, I thought I was just already losing. I mean, I was just trying to like survive, but it looked like, it's just a matter of time before white's second rook gets in and it's just game over. Apparently black is surviving after king h7, so I might have kind of blundered this away. I didn't really check this game with an engine at all, but here white would have to play queen f5 check, king g8. I was thinking, white is doing well. Like knight moves, rook comes in. Okay, engine seems to think black is surviving. To me, it still looks like black is in huge danger, but okay, I'll take the engine's word for it. I played king h8 though, which is, unfortunate, very unfortunate move, because now I just check, and my king is stuck, and knight e3, and now this is game over. So yeah, I just kind of completely forgot that, he can just come back and cut my king off once again. So yeah, a bit of a miss there. Definitely should have played king h7. But overall, very interesting game. I thought it was super instructive how Daniel played it with making this exchange, and then just playing like the light squares, and then after f5, just like meeting this with f4. Now, I'm sure there's all kinds of opportunities I missed in this game, but yeah, I thought it was pretty instructive the way things played out. Okay, then going into the last game, so I took white. We had the same arrangement here. I decided to start with d4. He went knight c6, played c3, d5, and played bishop a4. I thought this was kind of cheeky. After the game, he told me this was super annoying to see. It's like kind of funny, like weird Rui Lopez style. It's just awkward for black. Now there's this pin, and he doesn't want to put his queen there. I'm ready to like maybe double the pawns. He went knight d7. I played knight d2, e5. Yeah, we're thinking maybe I should have just possibly just like traded here, and then played like knight d2 and e4 and stuff, and played this structure. But yeah, I wasn't sure. We end up getting this e3. You get this like very kind of strange position where I end up after knight b6 going back. Probably was critical to actually double the pawns, but I kind of felt like this knight on c6 isn't great anyway, like going up against the c3 d4 pawn chain. And I figured I should rather get my bishop back, and I thought the bishop would be more useful. Yeah, if bishop takes c6, it's a little it's like a mirrored Sveshnikov. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like normally you get bishop g5 takes f6, you get like the doubled f pawns. Here you'd have like double c pawns. Yeah, I mean, it's just wild. You get these like fancy structures. So bishop c2, queen e6, knight g3. He could take on d4 here, but then I'd get knight f5 tempo against this one, and then I'd be able to recapture. So he goes here. Knight b3, castles, h5. I kind of like my position, but it was hard to play. e4, h6, g6, bishop h2, b3. We end up trading, knight e2. Yeah, I felt like I have a very reasonable position here. But he has a lot of space, and definitely end up misplaying it. So here, a4, king f2, knight a5, rook b1, bishop h4. I kind of thought I was getting somewhere here with like the trade of dark square bishops, but I end up kind of making a crucial mistake here. Knight g3, rook f6, queen e1. I honestly wasn't even sure what side of the board to play on, because it's like hard for white to really create a lot of space on the king side. I don't have a lot of squares to work with. So I was kind of thinking maybe I should try to like open up the queen side somehow and try to get in. I always have this h6 pawn, but yeah, it really wasn't easy. So here, bishop f7, this is where I kind of essentially go wrong, or this is what we thought after the game. I go rook g5, and of course the rook never makes it out. I knew this was risky, and yeah, obviously white can drop back this way, like rook h4, rook h1 or something, and then the rook is a lot more flexible. But I was worried that this was kind of my only one chance to get in. And if I don't take this chance to put the rook on g5 and then maybe get to g7, then I would never get another chance. So with that in mind, I decided to play here. But yeah, ultimately this was probably the wrong decision, because I'm never able to generate enough pressure, enough juice to make it work. So I tried this. Rook f8, now I'm bringing the king over here because I got scared of like queen c6, queen takes c3, king d2. He starts bringing his knight around, and he's getting ready to win the exchange, which I knew was a possibility. I was just hoping that after knight e2, if he takes the exchange, I just get this like brilliant f4 square for the knight. But it really just doesn't end up being enough here. a3, I played c4. I'm not sure what I should have done. I think at this point it's already a very difficult position for white. But yeah, I tried to create some counterplay on this side of the board, but my king is just way too open. So he does take the exchange. He goes rook c6. And now if knight f4, he's got queen takes a2, as well as queen b5, so all kinds of stuff. So I tried this. Now he goes f4, and yeah, basically it's game over here. He's breaking through. If knight takes f4, he'll go rook takes, and then e3 or queen takes d4 check. Everything probably wins. So yeah, it's basically just over here. I try queen g1, like defending here, but f3. I play here, takes, and yeah, now I think there's lots of wins. I think e3 again wins on the spot, but he finds, I think, the most precise f2. Hitting the queen, takes, rook takes e2 check. I got to take back. I resign here because after takes e3, of course he's winning the queen, and game over. I don't have any any tactics or anything like that. So yeah, that was the end. Tough game. Really just very, very difficult middle game, but also a very interesting game overall, and definitely one actually I could maybe even analyze deeper and try to take more from. But yeah, so I ended up having really tough last day. Like I won a nice match against Canty, but then I lost to Gauri 2-0. I lost the match to Kayden, which was very tough, 1.5, and then lost to Danya as well. Of course, I feel like I had the like 3 toughest opponents in the last rounds, but okay, that's sometimes how it breaks. But yeah, this Naroditsky guy, yeah, he won a lot of nice games in the event. And he gave some big odds. He gave like peace odds, to Nemo and Anna, and ended up winning most of those games. I think he won both against Nemo with peace odds, and then 1.5 against Anna with the peace odds. So go Anna, got a draw against Daniel. Not easy. No. All right. So here were the final standings. So they're not quite in order. You can kind of get an idea here. Daniel took first place with 30 points. So again, soccer scoring system. So 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw. So Daniel got first with 30. Gauri got second with 26. He did really well. He got 6 points against me. I think he got 6 points against James. Oh, and he also beat Eric 2-0. So yeah, he beat all of us 2-0. Me, James, and Eric. And then 1.5 against Nemo. So it looks like, I think Nemo got third place. So she did really well. Okay, she was getting odds against us, but still she played really well. Especially in our games, I thought she played really, really well. Could have gotten 2 wins. So she got third, looks like. Eric got fourth with 16th. I got fifth with 14th, so a little bit behind Eric. And then James got 9. Anna finished with 8. And then Larry got 7. So Larry, he played some games, but then he got a little bit more sick during the tournament, so he had to withdraw, unfortunately. And that's when kind of Kayden stepped in. So if you count Larry and Kayden's points together, then they did pretty they did pretty reasonably. Although I don't think they ended up playing everyone. So yeah, there you have it, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed the recap. Overall, it was super fun and super cool experience. Obviously, Utah was beautiful, and I loved it there. It was very, very nice. But the Chess18, that was also very interesting. I felt like we had like a ton of interesting games in the tournament, and lots of interesting like middle game ideas, end game ideas, calculation stuff. And then the openings, the openings were super interesting. Just like figuring out the structures and how to develop all the pieces. That was definitely a lot of fun.